Okay,
You know what, my mother's,
Ila Mae Schultz, the camera is recording. Where were you born? Let's start at the beginning.
I was born on a farm in Lafayette County, Wisconsin.
Now, is this the farm where Louis' farm now?
Yes,
The house that you were born in is gone.
yes.
That was the original house that I used to visit as a kid.
My grandma and grandpa had an older house that they lived in on that farm.
Well, now are we talking about the house I would call Merv's house on the farm? The big old brick house
Yeah.
with the summer kitchen or whatever with the breezeway.
My dad built a summer kitchen, but originally my grandma and grandpa lived in an old house on that farm.
So that was before the house I remember.
Yeah,
So there's actually been three houses on that. There's three houses on the farm. Louis' current
Yeah.
house,
yeah,
Mervyn Elner's house, and then Grandpa's house.
yeah.
Now, which grandpa was this?
This is Grandpa Schultz,
Henry.
Henry,
Henry and his wife's name was
Eureka.
Erika. They built a house that was, do you remember this house?
I lived in it.
Okay, so was it a wood house, a brick house?
It was a brick house.
Where was it in relation to Mervyn Elner's house?
This is what I'm talking about, is Mervyn Elner's. The other original house was a
Oh.
little old frame house and very old.
So that was the first house that was built on the farm.
That's where Uncle Frank and my dad and Uncle Arthur were born. Uncle Amy was born in the brick house.
Okay. And you were born in the brick house.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the boys, my brothers.
So the boys were born there as well.
Right.
So the boys are Merv.
Arthur was 12 years older than me. Merv was 10 and Cecil was 6 years older.
Okay. So there was a big gap between you and Cecil
Yeah,
in terms of age. Okay. So then there's the brick house that Louis replaced that with the house he has now.
yeah.
Now, when did the house in Warren pop up?
My grandma and grandpa moved to Warren when my dad and mother got married, and that was in 1906. And they built that house probably in 1905.
Okay, so they went in, they left the farm to Henry then, more or less.
They left it to Louis, my dad.
Oh, wait, no, wait.
Henry and Eureka left the farm to my dad.
Oh,
He also left a farm to Uncle Amy, and he left a farm to Uncle Frank.
okay, so Henry and Erika, and then your father was Louis,
Louis.
and your mom's name was?
Lena.
Lena, Louis and Lena. So Henry moves into Warren with Erika and lives in the big old brick house in Warren. And then we have Louis and Lena
On the farm.
on the farm. So did they build that house then?
No,
They-
Grandpa had built the house
Oh, okay. So he built.
on the farm. Grandpa built the house on the farm.
So he actually
Then
built two houses.
Yeah,
I mean, the one in Warren and the one on the farm.
yeah,
So was he a wealthy man, Henry?
yeah, he was. And he acquired it. He came from Germany and acquired it himself by working hard.
Okay, so then you grew up in where did you grow up mostly?
On the farm.
On the farm.
And then my mother married Uncle Amy in 1940,
Okay, so your father, Louis, dies in
34,
1934, and you were how old?
12.
12 when he died. Do you remember this?
Oh, never forget it. We had a private nurse, and she had white uniform, and my dad was dad was a chairman of the township and on the county board, and he was on the school board. He loved public work, and he worked as a chairman on the roads with the people, and he acquired money for the township that was in debt. And he built roads, and it was during the Depression. He'd carry food to people on welfare. And he had a doctor in South Wayne, a young Jewish doctor that he liked so much, Dr. Springberg. And
So a Jewish man lived in South Wayne.
a doctor, a young doctor.
Wow.
And Dr. Springberg said, "You've got to go home, Louie, and go to bed for a week." And my dad parked his truck and went to bed. He liked this doctor. And the nurse took care of him, and I would come home at noon to feed him, and I would shave him, and I came home after school one night, and my mother was talking to Herman Kripke on the porch, and Herman said, "How is Louie?" And my mother said, "Today is his best day." And I went into the bedroom, and he was sitting up, and he said to the nurse, "I feel funny," and he died.
You saw him
While
die.
my mother is out talking to Herman Kripke, he died right there, and I was there. And he was embalmed in that living room. The undertaker came out from Warren, and they put a rug over the French door, and I never slept 1 minute that night because my dad was down there by himself, and he had died.
What did he die of?
He had
A heart attack?
enlarged heart, and he was 59 years old. So he was a prominent, well-liked cattle buyer, thrasher, silage, silo filler, and a road on the road with the public offices, and everybody liked my dad. So they came from all over the county because they knew him, and he had friends and relatives and people that he knew. It was a great big funeral, and I couldn't believe that my dad had died.
What do you remember about your dad growing up as a kid?
He never once ever said anything to me harsh, ever. And I never did anything wrong in front of him because I couldn't, because I admired him so much. My mother, I was used to her, and we were together so much that I wasn't that great to my mother. But we had a wonderful love and friendship. But my dad, we used to play checkers, and that made me very happy to. And he was a card player. I learned to play euchre with all the neighbors sitting on his lap, and he would tell me which card to play when I was 2 and 3 years old. And he was a wonderful man.
So then what happened? Louis dies, and then your mom marries Amy, who's Louis's brother.
Yeah.
Okay, so Amy was a bachelor until
He was
then?
a bachelor, and my mother said she would never ever marry anybody else. But Uncle Amy was in our family all the time. He became a dad to the boys and but he was there before that even. He was always around. And she said she would never have married, except it made a home for him and it made a home for her.
Okay, so the picture that we have of the house in Warren with the family in front of it, who's sitting next to your mom? That's Louis at
Yeah.
that point. So Louis was still alive when that picture was taken.
Oh, well, that was way before
Yeah.
us kids were born.
Okay.
It was right away when they moved into that house, evidently. See, I didn't know my grandma and grandpa.
You didn't?
They
Okay.
died before I was born.
So then how did your mom end up moving to Warren?
Well, when Mervyn Elmer got married,
Mm-hmm.
why, they took over the farm, and we moved to Warren and painted all the walls, and there was no electricity in that house. There was no running water.
So was there anyone living in it at that point?
Uncle Amy.
Oh, Amy.
But he also had a farm that he would move to because he had a renter.
Oh, Amy was living in the big house.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was
okay.
his left to him.
Oh, okay. So when your father died, your grandparents had already died. Okay, now I understand.
That was Uncle Amy inherited the big house and a farm, but it was a smaller farm. It was 80 acres, and then he had a renter that didn't pay his rent and left him, so he couldn't get money for I don't know how many years out of that renter. So he went out himself and farmed it, and the boys helped him. We would go up there, and the boys would cut the hay, but Uncle Amy lived in both houses for a while until he married my mother.
Okay.
And then Art and Lucille moved. They got married, and they lived on that farm of Uncle Amy's. They rented that farm of Uncle Amy's.
So where did you go to school when you were living on the
I
farm?
went to Zion School, and it's still there, by Art and Lucille's house.
Okay, the white schoolhouse.
Yeah.
Okay. But didn't you live in South Wayne for a while too?
No,
No.
never lived there. I went to school there
So So when did you go to school in South Wayne?
when I was in high school.
Okay. So at what age did you move to Warren?
When I was 17.
So were you in high school then?
No, I was through high school.
You were through high school by the age 17.
Yeah.
Okay. So how would you get to South Wayne School?
There was a neighbor boy, Donald Lineberger, that drove fast. And I don't know how my mother left me ride with him, because he had an old Chevy, like a box. And we went over icy hills and fast as he could go. But my mother always said, Donald is a good driver. But sometimes when I was going down those hills on that ice, I'd think, how did my mother ever let me ride with Donald in this box? Then he quit school, and then Marjorie Durstein, her folks got her a great big old Buick. And she picked up, there was probably 6 of us, or 7, and we rode with her every day.
And talk about your mom.
Well, my mom was a little woman, and a beautiful woman, and did everything. she worked so hard. She could do anything. And she didn't have conveniences. We didn't have running water. We didn't have indoor bath. She had a wash house that she would fill the tubs with. There was a stove out there to heat the water for the laundry, and it came out of a cistern. We had 2 cisterns that you pumped the water, and
How did you heat the water? Wood fire?
she had a wood burning cook stove in the wash house, and she would start that up, and when it was cold, it felt good to have a fire out there. In the summertime, when it was terribly hot, we would live out there. She would cook out there. We had a table and we had cupboards, and it kept the house very cool.
Now this is where, in Warren or at the farm?
On the farm.
Now where was the wash house?
The wash house was you just outside of the
Oh, so it was under the same roof that was separated from the
separate
house by the
roof,
breezeway.
yeah, separate.
Okay, that was where when I was a kid, that's where all the toys were
Yeah,
in that room.
yeah.
Okay, so that was the wash house, and that was was that the kitchen too or not?
Yeah,
Okay,
it had a cook stove, and we had cupboards and tables.
so what? Okay, so I remember the floor plan of this house, but what was in where the kitchen was later?
In
When Louis lived in that house.
in the big house.
Yeah.
What was in the kitchen?
Yeah, if the kitchen was as you're talking about basically a summer kitchen, right?
That summer kitchen was still out there.
Was the wash house,
Yeah.
right? But so when you were growing up as a kid, what was on the first floor of the?
We had a kitchen.
So you had 2 kitchens.
Yeah.
Oh,
See, in
okay.
the summertime, my mother didn't have to heat the stove up to cook.
Okay.
And so it would keep the house nice and cool. And so lots of times we had a table out there and chairs and cupboards and dishes, and so we would just eat out there.
Now, was there electricity in that house? In that house? I suppose not originally.
There wasn't until, I think maybe when Merv and Elder moved in it, there was electric. Yeah, we did. We had electricity before I left there.
So you had a outhouse that you'd have to take
Yeah.
a trip out to in the winter.
Yeah.
And how often did you? I mean, what was your day like as a kid growing up on the farm?
Oh,
I mean,
it was wonderful. We didn't know any different, and you didn't know what you were missing because you never had it, and so it was. Now thinking it was very inconvenient because every bit of water you had to pump and put it in the stove on a reservoir to heat. And you'd heat water on the stove in a big dishpan. And we had a drain, of course. And our drinking water was way down below in a well. And they would have to take a milk pail and bring up cold drinking water and set it on the edge of the sink with a dipper in it.
and how often did you take a bath?
We would take a bath in the wash house. There was a drain there. And we would put a big dishpan on the washing machine. There was grills for her to set her tubs on. And we would put a big dishpan there, soap all up over this drain that went outside, soap all up, and then pour the water over you.
Warm water.
Warm.
Yeah. But how often would you take a bath or shower?
Well, the boys would take one every night
They would,
because they
okay.
were working in the field and they'd get so warm. And whenever you felt like you needed a bath, why?
Talk about your brothers.
Well, there was Art, he was the oldest one, and Merv and Cecil, and they always got along. I never can remember them ever fighting. They just enjoyed each other. We all enjoyed each other. We never had any fights. And Cecil used to tease the boys. He was the youngest. And he always would tease. They would even sit at the table and take a little spoon and put a little water in it and throw it. That would start a big water fight.
So what would
they'd
mom and
flip
dad?
it.
What would mom and dad do at this point?
Well, they didn't always see it. Cecil was the one that started it. He'd flip a teaspoon of water in Art's face or Merv's. That was the beginning. Then after they got done eating, they chased him down the lane with buckets of water. And he'd run down the lane and squat in a ditch, and they'd pour buckets on him. And then when they were working hard in the field, they would go and lay down in the backyard during the day, noon, after they'd eaten lunch. And they just lay there for a little while and rest and relax. Because a lot of the field work was hard work back then. It wasn't machines, big machines like you have. And so then Cecil would go upstairs in the bedroom window, and there he'd toss water out on them. So then it started, and he knew what he was gonna get, but it was fun. But they all enjoyed each other, and my dad and mother never. My mother would complain about my dad because he did so much for other people. He was gone, and it left her with the boys to do a lot of the managing in the farm, just advising the boys, because he was gone a lot, and he liked that. And so my mother had that responsibility. But we had chickens, and we had eggs, and my cousins and my aunt would say they would come over a lot. And of course, my mother would never know when they were coming. They just come driving down the lane, a whole bunch of them. And my mother would quick run out and catch a chicken, cut the head off, clean it, prepare the chicken, and stir up a little cake right at the table while she's talking to them. They have told me that so many times, and of course I remember it too, because I was there, but they were older than me, those cousins. But they'd always say how your mother could stir up a little cake right there on the kitchen table.
What kind of cake would she make?
It was a 1-egg cake, and it was simple, I suppose. Cup of sugar and cup and a half of flour and an egg, and she'd stir that up quick and put it in the oven.
And how'd she fix the chicken?
It was always delicious because it was fresh chicken.
Yeah.
Raised on the farm. And so, she would flour it and salt and pepper it and probably
Pan fry it?
Pan fry it. Yeah, that's what she would do, because it had to be done in a hurry because the company came. So
you probably had a big garden too, right?
We had a big garden, but my mother had asthma so bad that the garden was a problem for her to go down there in the winter, or in the summer. It was damp and it would hang heavy with humidity or something. And she had chronic asthma, and she just always had a problem.
So who took care of the garden?
Well, she did. And the boys, she would ask the boys to hoe and weed, and they did.
And what did you do? What was your work?
I mowed yard and trimmed, and I did the house cleaning. And my mother never had to clean house because I'd start upstairs and dust. And at that time, you would shake everything out the window, open a window, take the dust mops, and you'd shake it out the window. There was a lot of beds to be changed, and the stairs coming down, and I always cleaned house for my mother.
What was your favorite holiday during the year?
I think Christmas.
Talk about Christmas at the farm.
Well, lots of times we had a tree that wasn't much of a tree. It would be the top of a pine tree. And the decorations were sometimes candles
Oh.
with clips, and we didn't dare burn them. We'd burn them a little while. And there was a clock, a chimney and a clock shelf. And the chimney came up through the middle of the house, and we always put the tree underneath that clock shelf. And Christmas there wasn't an awful lot of gifts because it was during the Depression, and a lot of it was clothes. The boys would get shirts and socks and ties.
You talked about Cecil. What about Merv and Art?
Merv was took care of things. He liked to improve everything. He could just fix and keep things up and paint. And another thing about my dad, he built the barn, the new barn, by himself. The old barn was Grandpa's barn, and then he built a new barn, and he did it himself.
Now,
my dad.
okay, so the old barn
It's
is
still there.
where they used to milk cows.
No. The old barn is the one that you drive in up above.
Oh, okay.
And the new barn was going east and west. And the other barn set sort of north and south. But my dad painted every board before he put it up. And there was a barn raising. And we had a barn dance. People came from all over, and there was a band, and we had a barn dance. Merv used to paint all the bedrooms, and he would make stencils out of, it was sort of like an oil art paper. It came in about 6-inch strips, I think. And he would make the design himself and cut out the pattern at night. And every room had a different stencil on it.
Really? But so what were the patterns?
Flowers.
Okay.
And mostly a flower. And maybe a just continuous zigzag cutout design. And then the the rooms would be pink or blue or something, and then he would put a border around every bedroom and living room and all over had a border that he made himself. He helped my mother. Merv could do most anything. Art wasn't like that. Art was, he worked outside and farmed and so forth, but he wasn't as handy as Merv. I can remember one time my dad and mother went down to Myers's, and Merv was home with us, and he made homemade ice cream. And he stirred up a cake. And it was a mock angel food cake. It was a good little recipe. It was really tasty. And I found that recipe years later, and I baked that cake and took it down to Mervyn Elner's once, long time ago. But he made this mock angel food cake, and it was very good with homemade ice cream.
I didn't ever know this side of Merv existed, where he was doing painting and stenciling.
Merv could do anything. Did you remember do you remember you never heard it, a record that he
Yeah, we're
had?
going to try to find that. I don't know where that is, but we're going to try to find that.
Oh, that was comical. That was all about Jack
Yep.
and the Jeep. That's when we were building the house in Monroe. That was funny.
Okay, so now you are now living in Warren, in the big house, out of school. Talk about what happens there in Warren. At some point you're going to meet Dad. But I thought you met Dad when you were in high school.
No.
No, okay.
I knew a lot of Warren kids, but I never knew him.
Was he living in Warren then?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was in Warren since he was probably 9 or 10 or something like that. No, I didn't know him. I knew the people where he lived, but I didn't know him. I worked in the Garner's store, and they had clothing store, and she was a very fussy and strict person to work for, but I didn't tangle with her at all. Everybody else did, because if you came in that store and you didn't buy, you were in trouble.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, and even like myself, if I didn't sell, you were in trouble too. But I put up with her, and everybody knew about her, that she was a mean lady. But then I worked in the telephone office, and I worked in the drugstore.
Now, the telephone office was real close to your house, right?
It was downtown.
Oh, okay, it's
But
downtown.
I lived
Okay.
close.
Okay, it was a brick building downtown.
Oh,
I remember you showing it to me
Yeah.
once on Main Street.
it's one of the old buildings.
Okay, with the outside stairway that goes up? Yeah, okay.
And I was up there alone at night, and I think about it now because you went up the stairs, and then you went into the front part, and you just had a flimsy, an old door that you closed. And there was in the back, there was a long hall to go back to the bathroom, and there was nothing back there except old rooms, dark rooms, and anybody could have come up those stairs before you closed and gotten in those back rooms. And then at 10 o'clock or so, or 9, I don't know, you'd go down and you'd lock